Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Stan Romanek is a hugely complex and controversial individual who, by his own account, has experienced just about every kind of alien encounter it is possible to have. This even includes being put out to stud to breed human-alien hybrids. It was more than we could cover in just one episode, so join us again this week for part 2 of the Stan Romanek story on Aliens Explored.
Welcome back, listeners, to Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we look at UFOs, UAPs, otherworldly visitations and all manner of strange goings on. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly.
And this week we are continuing talking about a very, very interesting case of Stan Romanek, who's had so much happen to him, we can't fit it into one episode.
We couldn't fit it into one, so and of course our tendency to go off topic and waffle, we just run out of time.
We did, but last week I think we gave a good sort of overview of the things that's happened to him. But this week it'd be good to go into a bit more detail, or a lot more detail, if we can. That would be brilliant. Now with Stan, so if you haven't listened to last week's episode, I would go back and listen to that first. That's episode 51. So have a listen to that and then come back and listen to this one. Or listen to them the other way round. I'm not your boss. Do it however you feel. So, his experience has started, as I understand it, around the year 2000.
That's what I understood as well.
And his videoing and photographing of UFOs occurred at the same time.
Yes. Was the first one when he was on his way somewhere and he saw lots of cars pulled over to the side of the road and he pulled up to see what it was and saw something in the sky and got his camera out and videoed this kind of double orb thing.
Yeah,
that's.
I don't know if that was his first UFO experience. And I suppose we ought to add in for covering all bases. This is when he first became aware of UFOs. I'm not going to bother saying allegedly. Let's assume I'm saying allegedly every other word on this podcast. And Neil, same for Neil, because that'll save us saying it over and over again. Everything is alleged. We're not saying it as fact. But yeah, this is when but so many people see UFOs. I guarantee you, at some point in your life, Neil, you will have seen UFOs.
I've certainly seen something in the sky where I thought, well, I don't know what that is.
That's exactly the definition of a UFO.
Exactly the definition. Or maybe I've seen something in the sky and thought, oh, it's just a plane, or it's just whatever, or a balloon or something. And
yes, maybe you've seen a UFO and misidentified it.
Like ghosts. Yeah, you pass someone in the street and not realise, oh, actually, there's a ghost. I do that all the time. Not realising people are actually ghosts. not realising who I'm passing in the street.
Right, well, we're hearing it in here, folks, for the first time. It's a bit of a revelation. We're finding out far more about Neil than we realised. I will be calling people to help him after the podcast. Not saying ghosts aren't real. at all. But no, so this is when he first becomes aware. But it strikes me as interesting. So I'm a filmmaker. You're an actor. Well, we're both actors, but you're an actor as well, Neil. Having our photos taken is kind of stock in trade, isn't it?
Yes, we do it for money.
And in my case, taking photos of others with their permission, with their knowledge, and videos,
with their payment.
And sometimes with their payment. Sometimes I pay them. Depends. But
depends on the arrangement. Yeah.
We're not going down that route. That's not what I meant. Yeah. But yeah. But Stan seems to have a camera, like going back and predating when everyone had a camera on their video on their phone. He seemed to have a camera, or video camera in particular, handy at some odd times. Very convenient times.
Very convenient times, but that doesn't really arouse my suspicions. If he'd, presumably there are lots of UFO sightings where he didn't have anything to hand, or extraterrestrial sightings, and so he just got in the habit of putting cameras up around his home and around his yard, or just having one with him in the car.
Maybe
like a journalist, a photojournalist would always have a camera with them, wouldn't they? Whether they're professional or amateur.
Well, a photojournalist, absolutely, because they've got just cause. But he's not a photojournalist.
I don't know what he is. I mean, if I thought that extraterrestrials were contacting me because they had some special knowledge for me, or whatever, I don't think I'd be making it my priority to film them and try and convince other people. I'd be wanting to find out, well, what is it you come to talk to me about? Because if I go and talk about other people about this, they're just going to think I'm nuts. Yeah,
there's that, and there's other things that we'll come on to later. But starting with the UFO sightings and certainly the photos and video footage of a lot of UFOs.
Yeah,
it's not a small amount, and some of them do seem otherworldly. Some of them, I think, could be quite easily explained. In one particular video session, there's a triangular craft. Well, you'll remember when we spoke to Barry, the aeronautical engineer, and he showed us some photos of craft he was working on, very triangular in shape.
And for the purpose of having a very low radar image. They, for instance, they don't have a tail plane because that poses a nice flat surface.
They're very narrow, very thin for that reason. But I think the triangular shape is just the way they are.
But we've also, I think we previously discussed something called the Robertson panel, and there was this idea that when the US was developing new types of aircraft in remote places, after the Second World War, when they Operation Paperclip, they're getting to grips with the Nazi technology, because Nazi weapons technology and aero technology was the most advanced in the Second World War. Just goes to show technology alone won't win you a war. But they put out these stories that of UFO sightings to cover up these experimental aircraft that they were testing, and with the view that anyone who claims to have seen one could then be dismissed as a nut job and utterly discredited. And
well, that's it. Yeah. And it's certainly quite possible that maybe he just happened to live close to somewhere where there was a lot of experimental aircraft.
It could be. I mean, that triangle. I mean, in that photo, it could have been a kite.
Possibly, but there were a lot of photos, so there's certainly something strange going on.
It's good to maintain a healthy skepticism, and when someone shows you a photo of something alleging to be a UFO or an extraterrestrial, you've got to think, well, yeah, I could have faked this, or could I have faked this, or what is it about this that makes it so compelling? And I think when you've got someone like Romanek with, please feel free to get in touch to put us right. When you've got this massive body of evidence, as I said, if it turns out you faked any of it, then that discredits it all.
Yes, it does. Yeah, because you're then proven to be a liar, people will assume you have lied about everything. Whether you have or haven't, it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah. And of course there will be people who are out there who are determined to just show that, yeah, they could have reproduced that. And that's the problem I have with a lot of Romanek's footage, is that I'm not saying it's faked, but it easily could have been to get that same image.
Well, we came up with the phrase last week, didn't we? Fakeable. Fakeable.
And as we talked about with the alleged Boo video, he made all sorts of claims that a video maker claimed that it would have cost $50,000 to recreate that video.
That is a false claim. Now that could have been somebody misleading him, of course, playing devil's advocate here.
Could be. I'll tell you something else I recognise. The mysterious voice on the telephone with the English accent.
Oh, the electronic voice that's clearly a computer speaking.
Voice. I recognise that voice from when I once played a prank on my stepdaughter. Because did you know, if you've got a digital landline phone, you can send a text to that number and a digital voice will read it out. So I knew my daughter was home alone, so I just, I don't know what people are going to think of me for this. So I sent a text to the home phone. So Jade would have heard the phone ring. She would have picked it up and heard, "You have one new message. Message, I am coming to kill you." It was getting near Halloween, so.
Oh, Neil.
But she loves that kind of thing. But it was that voice. It was exactly that voice.
Yes, that was that I can certainly see. And
I mean, I know he.
We've jumped a little bit from photos of UFOs to suddenly much later in the progression with the.
We have, yeah. I mean, I know that he had a conversation with someone. It wasn't just a recorded message. Sorry, but yeah, I can imagine you could easily achieve the same effect as a computer, just typing in your answers, and it would.
Yes.
And when you hit return, the voice does it.
You and I know we've done self tapes, which is a type of audition that you do on video for casting directors without having to see them in person. When you have somebody else's lines to do, there are ways and means. I record my own lines, and so it sounds like I'm saying them to myself, but
right.
And
we get each other to do it, don't we? I'll say, Stu, can you record these lines for me, and I'll just edit them into my video.
We've done that before. So to clarify for the listeners who are probably wondering what the hell we're talking about with these phone calls. So over a period of years, I believe, Stan and his family received phone calls from someone referring to him as Starseed, and saying things like "it is time" and you need to prepare yourself. And
what I'm thinking about that name Starseed, is that a reference to his allegedly having fathered human alien hybrid offspring?
Well, that would be one interpretation. Another interpretation might be that he himself was fathered from some alien race. That he himself is part alien, which seems to be kind of the unfolding story there. It certainly seemed to me. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah. And these are the parts of the documentary where he gets quite emotional when he talks about the girl holding his leg, the girl saying, "Please don't leave us, Daddy."
Yes, there seems to be 7. So we've jumped again so from the phone calls. So to explain to our listeners what we're talking about here, because we're assuming they haven't seen the documentary.
We have to assume
to assume that. So at one point, so we've got photos of UFOs. He also claims to have received phone calls from some unknown person or persons. Some of the phone calls he's received are people referring to him as Daddy and claiming to be calling from a long way away. And he also claims to have been abducted numerous times and under hypnotic regression claims to have seen a number of children. I believe there's 7 children in question in total, who it seems he has fathered or sort of been involved with procreating. Now there's some other interesting aspects to the abduction side of things, because it's not just Stan himself that is involved in all this. There is the woman Victoria Albright,
who is regularly abducted along with him.
Yes, and indeed, he would talk about her as being this sort of woman he'd repeatedly, that would be there on his abductions, and then he met in real life,
which gave his wife some cause for disquiet.
Well, the fact that they had a shared bond and would talk about things privately an awful lot. And indeed, if they have parented children together, I can understand why his wife might be a bit pissed off.
Now, there was one abduction when Stan came to, after the abduction, dressed in women's clothing, which he believes is Victoria Albright's clothing. I think it was a Winsett night, nothing sexy. It was a Winsett nightgown.
Oh, I've missed that one.
One of his abductions. He was, I suppose, the aliens don't really, the extraterrestrials don't know or care much about what we regard as appropriate clothing for different genders.
Okay. I'm not. I was just totally unaware of that.
Because there was one part where someone suggested that the garment that he was found wearing should have been, another suspected abductee called Betty Hill.
We talked about Betty and Barney Hill on our first episode.
That's it. He came to suspect that it was actually her gown. He was asked if it had been tested for Hill's DNA, and Romanek claimed that it hadn't been because the test was too expensive.
Okay,
fair enough. We're cash-strapped actors. We understand not doing something because it's expensive.
Yeah,
but it was the spate of UFO sightings in his area was actually sparked, and there was suddenly an awful lot of them. Because there was a movie made about Barney and Betty Hill, wasn't there? Shortly after that was broadcast, suddenly the rate of UFO sightings went through the roof.
That always happens with any certainly large-scale movie. Movies like Communion that we've talked about in the past. It always does prompt a surge in people claiming these stories. There's 2 sides to that. One is, yes, it's going to be there is going to be an element of attention seekers out there who just want the attention, obviously, but there is also another side to it, that it may also be people who, having seen it on the big screen, it's like, God, it's not just me then. And that gives them the confidence to talk about their experiences where they didn't have it before, where they felt isolated before and wouldn't talk about it as a result.
Someone who might have seen some orb in the sky that they couldn't explain previously, they would have just thought, oh, I wonder what that is. and then probably a balloon or something, and forgotten about it. But then after having watched the movie about Barney and Betty Hill, decided, actually, this is something I need to report.
Yeah,
in the same way, if you've worked for a large company, there will be far more fire alarms after everyone's had their annual fire safety training, because suddenly people are sensitized towards it, and someone burns the toast in the little kitchen, and someone rings the fire because they've been told by the fire officer, don't wait to investigate. If you smell smoke, press the fire alarm.
Yes. So just because there is a surge in claims of sightings of experiences, I wouldn't automatically discount them all as, it's because they've seen the movie. I mean, it might be triggered by them seeing the movie, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're false.
Doesn't mean they're false. No, it just means they're more likely to report them. That's
Now,
but it could be.
Stan's had. I mean, he's had all sorts of other experiences as well. You mentioned about orbs just now. He has strong video footage of orbs in his garden, in his living room. He's got video footage of a strange shadowy effect, which is particularly creepy.
The shadow being the one that passes. He's talking to his wife, and suddenly this shadowy figure moves between them.
Yeah,
that's quite. That made my spine tingle.
Or the photo of the one where the shadow being appears to be holding a remote control.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's creepy. It's definitely creepy. But of course, all these are shadows and videos, and we do know that such footage can be faked. But there is physical evidence of something happening to him as well. In particular, the number of wounds that he has sustained following abduction claims. Wounds that glow under a black light.
Now there was something about that, about the wound that he claimed showed up under a black light. That's it. Now, there was an injury he received, a more mundane injury, where he fell off a ladder.
Right.
And he as he fell, he landed on a wheelbarrow full of rubble and twisted, made it. Injured his knee quite badly.
Oh yes, his knee injury.
And he went to the doctors. This was on a Friday, and the doctor said, "Well, you're going to have surgery to fix that." Yeah. And he was booked in for the following Wednesday, which meant he'd have to live through the weekend without it. And then he had some experience. This is where the extraterrestrials.
Just to stop you there. Before he had that experience, he had a knee brace fitted and a cast.
Yes. So
prior to the surgery, because that's important to the story.
Preparing, yes, it is important to the story. It's more than I thought. This is when the extraterrestrials came to the door, isn't it? And his wife opened the door, and he sort of hobbled up behind her and saying, "Don't open the door because they're going to come in and rob us, whoever they are." And realised that his wife was in some kind of trance, just gazing at the ceiling, and then he collapsed. And then when he woke up, his leg was better. The brace that was on it had disappeared. The swelling had gone. They eventually found the brace sort of all melted and scattered all around his, near where he lived. And he called the doctor, I think on the Monday, and said, "I don't need this surgery anymore." And she said, "Well, yeah, I understand how you're nervous about it, but if you don't have this surgery, you'll be crippled for life, basically. You'll never walk on that knee again." And he said, "Well, no, I don't know how to explain this, but it's all better now." And she said, "Well, I don't believe you." And she said, I'm not at my surgery at the moment, but I can refer you to my colleague in the emergency room who do his own assessment." And they did, and they... In the documentary, what he had was what looked like a line of insect bites, about 5 little bites down the back of his. There isn't a name for it, is there? The back of your knee, but along that area.
Oh, now there is a specific name for it, in fact, and I've forgotten what it is. It's a really obscure name, though.
But later, in 2009, on an interview on ABC Primetime, Romanek said he had physical evidence of his abduction experiences by way of this alien implant in his leg, but when a medical test was requested, Romanek said it had disappeared.
Okay,
which isn't a good way to maintain your credibility.
It's not, however. So just to be clear, I think you've conflated two different stories there. There's the one where aliens allegedly came and visited him and Lisa, his wife, at the door, and communicated with him psychically, and the one where his knee was repaired. No, he went to bed as normal that night.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Lisa woke up for some reason. He wasn't there. She couldn't find him. And then eventually she found him sort of standing in the living room. There was another of these circular, almost like scorch marks in the grass outside. She called him over to the window to look at it, and he just walked straight over.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And she says, "Well, don't you notice anything?" He's like, "Well, yeah, there's a fucking great circle in the grass." She's like, "No, you're walking fine. Your cast is gone." And they actually couldn't find the brace or the cast initially. But yes, explaining away, so it does all sound a bit strange, and yes, such wounds, they are in a straight line. They actually, now this is not me suggesting this is what it is simply an observation, but they look to me like when I have seen self-inflicted cigarette burns on people. Okay,
that's like sort of blistering yellow pus leaking out of the...
in a small circle. That is what they put me in mind of. Very much.
I've seen one. Have you heard of that trick? It's an army trick. But basically, you take a £10 note or a dollar bill or something, a $50 bill or something of value, and you wrap it tightly on someone's hand, so that the material is pressed tight to the skin. And you say to them, if you can burn a hole through that with a cigarette, you can have it. Yeah, it's got the higher the value the note, the better. So they will be there burning this note that's pressed hard to their skin, burning that with a cigarette, trying to burn a hole in it, and you can't because the fluids will rise up from your skin to protect your skin. They will actually protect the bill. So what you'll get is a massive blister on your hand. The bill's unharmed.
That's
one of those little tricks they play on raw recruits in the military.
Wow. I always knew there was a reason I didn't want to join. Okay. My goodness.
But yeah, so I know what one of those burns looks like.
Right. So there's that, but it doesn't explain how the knee was suddenly healed.
It doesn't, no.
That is a big mystery, and that those aren't the only occasions of wounds that he's had as well. There have been many cases of similar types of wounds, quite often in triangular shapes or like three dots together in an equilateral shape, bruises, nosebleeds unexpectedly, all kinds of different things that have come from him allegedly being abducted.
Yeah, and I did wonder, is that caused because he travels in a craft that his body really isn't designed for he sustains injuries, or is it that when they drop him off it's kind of mafia style, when they sort of drive past and push you out the door and you roll into the gutter, that kind of
it's hard
home.
It's hard to say, but as the majority of wounds are in a specific pattern, it does look more like medical sort of incisions and medical wounds rather than
but there are times I see pictures where he just looks beaten up.
Yes, well there are times he has been beaten up, of course, by people randomly coming up and just you need to keep your mouth shut about all this alien stuff. People he doesn't know. Yeah, there's been cases of that. Alleged Men in Black type situations.
Yeah.
But you know what? We've hit that time. I mean, we've not, even then, we've not covered everything on a two-parter about Stan.
Have we really hit that time? Goodness me. Perhaps you'll come back to him at a later time, or
So let's summarise where we are with Stan Romanek. Do you want to go first?
What I think is there's an awful lot of evidence, some of it very, very compelling. There was one that I wanted to mention, we didn't have time to, when he wrote out something called the Drake equation.
Yes.
Which describes how you travel beyond the speed of light.
Sorry, just to be clear on that, the Drake equation is to calculate the likelihood of intelligent life contacting us.
Oh, is it?
Yes,
okay.
That's the Drake equation. He's done a number of equations. The Drake equation was one of them. Calculating Alcubierre's warp equations were another
that's a formula used to estimate the number of communicative extraterrestrial civilizations in our galaxy. Allegedly, he wrote this out under hypnosis. Now, to give you, someone has suggested, someone called Joe Nickel from the Centre for Inquiry suggested the equation was done through simple memorization. But to memorize something like that, imagine going into a university lecture hall where there's been a physics professor has just been putting a massively complicated equation across 3 blackboards. It's just a mass of figures, the kinds of things you see in science labs in movies. It's a vast equation.
Alcubierre's equation you're talking.
Sorry?
Not the Drake equation. Drake equation's relatively simple. So it's got 5 elements
one he wrote
to it.
There was huge. It was a huge equation.
That would be the Alcubierre. Yeah.
Is that the speed of light?
Yes.
I'm getting very mixed up. Thanks for bailing me out again, Steve. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff. I'm still sticking with this idea that he's got so much stuff, so much of it easily fakeable, and so much not. As I say, if he was stupid enough to, I'm not saying you're stupid, Stan, if you're listening. If you were stupid enough to fake something and then get caught in a fake, that discredits everything else.
That's absolutely true. But so, do you believe what he's saying then?
It's hard to know. Why would he be saying it if it wasn't true? Unless he really is just a sensation seeker, he's just decided to make a living out of it. His wife believes him 100%, but she could be in on it too. I just don't know. I'll keep an open mind. I'm not going to say no, it's all bollocks. I certainly, the idea that we're visited by extraterrestrials, that they want to convene with us, I'm perfectly accepting of that idea. There are more habitable planets in the universe than there are grains of sand on Earth. I've read somewhere. So
true.
Yeah. So I with Stan Romanek, I just don't know. I'd love him to come on the programme if he was ever able to listen to this.
That would be absolutely fantastic, and certainly I would have so many questions for him because, I mean, like you, I keep an open mind. I'm a great believer that the mind's like a parachute. If it's not open, it's not going to do shit. So it's certainly not going to work.
Or as the band Magazine once sang, my mind is so open that anything can crawl right in.
So there are, as you rightly say, there are some very compelling, very intriguing elements to his story. Some really, some stuff that is very hard to explain away. But there are also some elements that seem very, very tricky to me. I'm not thinking so much about the videos. I'm thinking about some of the photographic evidence of alleged extraterrestrials. Look to me to be, I'll be blunt, fake. And there's one in particular where he's at he's in his garden and he takes a photo and he inadvertently catches one of these young girls hiding behind the decking, and you see a sort of that looked to me very much like when you artificially implant a photo into either video or photograph using a technique called masking. It looked fake. It looked very fake. And not saying anything about the aliens themselves in his sort of Peeping Tom and Boo videos. You mentioned this last week, in fact, and to quote my favourite movie, Galaxy Quest, it doesn't take a good actor to spot a bad one. And it really does look to me like bad acting on his part. I'm of the belief, I'm going to stick a stake in the ground about what I believe, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. But I believe he is someone who has had otherworldly experiences, but either for attention or capitalization or possibly even mental health issues. I'm not suggesting that, I'm just speculating about possible causes. For some reason, I believe he has expanded on them with inventions of his own.
I can't disagree with that.
No, that's what I believe. Now, I'm happy to be proven wrong. And Stan, if you listen to this, do get in touch. We would love to interview you on the show, give you the opportunity to say what you think and answer questions that we might have. We'd love to hear from you. Maybe I'm quite happy to admit if I've got it all wrong. But yeah, that's how it looks, having watched the documentary on Amazon Prime. And again, for our listeners, that's Extraordinary, the Stan Romanek story. It's available here in the UK on Amazon Prime Video. Don't know where you'd find it in the US.
Or anywhere else.
Nope. But yeah.
But it's a freebie in the UK.
Yeah. Worth looking out for. Worth looking out for and watching and deciding for yourself. And once you do, you know what to do. Jump on Facebook, jump on Twitter, jump on our website, message us, let us know what you think about Stan Romanek's story. That's what we're really, really keen to hear, is your view on these things. Isn't it, Neil?
Absolutely, it is, 100%. We live for your feedback.
So anyway, that's what we think of Stan Romanek's story. Don't forget to join us next time, though, when we will be discussing the Thule Society.
Or Tula, depending on where you come from.
Neil is the linguist out the two of us.
I think we do pronounce it Thule, but because there are Thule products. There's a company called Thule.
Is there?
They make roof racks for cars, yeah.
Oh, right. I wonder if they'll be coming into our discussions next week then. I'll look forward to hearing about that. Yes, we will be discussing the Thule or Tula Society. In the meantime, keep watching those documentaries and the skies.
And feeding back to us. Let us know what you think.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We love to hear from you. Take care for now.
Catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Aliens Explored is a Figo Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.